Hello again, my dear friends. Welcome back to our quiet corner. It's a true pleasure to have you here with us tonight. Do make yourself completely comfortable, allowing your body to settle deeply into the soft, welcoming support of your bed. I don't know about you, but I find there is a unique kind of comfort in knowing that the busy, active season of the year has come to its natural end. It's a time for letting go, a time for stillness, and a time for allowing your mind to rest as completely as the earth beneath us. Before we journey to the village tonight, let us take a slow, deep, settling breath in, feeling the cool air fill your chest. Hold it for just a moment, and now release it with a long, slow, unhurried sigh. Let your shoulders drop completely. Let the muscles in your face soften. Let the quiet rhythm of your breathing become like the gentle, effortless flow of a calm river moving through the dark. The world outside is fading away now, and tonight you are entirely safe, entirely warm, and tucked away from all care. Tonight we're going to join Rosco and friends in the valley for a night that doesn't come very often. It's the evening of the floating lanterns, a quiet ritual that marks the official arrival of the deep winter rest. So snuggle down into your blankets, let your eyelids grow heavy and relaxed, and let us walk down the soft, leaf-strewn path. The afternoon had dissolved into a peculiar, magnificent stillness. The deep amber sun had long since slipped beneath the rolling crest of the hills, leaving behind a sky of the most profound, velvety midnight blue. A silver crescent moon hung high and sharp, casting a soft, milky glow over the frosted tips of the meadow grass. Down in the hollow, the village river had slowed to a glassy, dark mirror. The rushing, playful currents of summer were gone, replaced by a deep, patient movement that seemed to whisper of the coming frost. Rosco stood on the porch of the cottage, a thick wool scarf wrapped snugly around his neck. He looked out into the twilight, his chest rising and falling in slow, rhythmic breaths. There was no wind tonight. Not a single leaf stirred in the ancient woods. It was the perfect night, the one rare night of the year when the air was still enough and the water calm enough for the lanterns to make their journey. The bunnies stepped out beside him, their paws tucked around warm baked potatoes that they held in their pockets, their noses twitching a whiskerful quiet twitch. They didn't speak, for they knew the ancient rule of this night. From the moment the twilight sky turned plum purple, the village entered into a sacred, beautiful silence. It was a time to rest the voice, to quiet the thoughts, and to let the hands do the talking. Together with slow, unhurried steps, Rosco and the bunnies wended their way down the winding lane toward the center of the village, ready to prepare for the gathering. At the edge of the village common, the wide double doors of the old carpentry workshop stood open, spilling a rich, amber lake of light onto the cobblestones. Inside, the space was wonderfully warm, heated by a huge brick hearth where a fire of old oak roots crackled soothingly. As Rosco and the bunnies stepped inside, the familiar, deeply calming sense of the workshop enveloped them. The dry, sweet perfume of freshly shaved cedar, the earthy tang of pine resin, and the clean, distinct aroma of pure, unrefined beeswax. Sitting at the long, smooth workbench were Marlow Badger and Huxley Harpsichord. The two large badgers moved with an extraordinary, deliberate slowness, their heavy, silver-furred paws working with total precision. On the table between them sat a neat, beautiful row of hand-carved wooden lanterns. These were not intricate or convoluted. They were simple blocks of soft pine and cedar, hollowed out in the centre, their edges sanded down until they were as thin as card and felt as smooth as river stones. Marlow looked up as Rosco entered, his dark eyes crinkling into a warm, silent greeting. With a slow, gentle nod, he slid two cedar lanterns across the wood-shaving-covered bench toward Rosco. Next to them, the small field mice, Marigold Mixtint and Mabel Seedling, were busy with the wicks. Working with meticulous care, their tiny paws unrolled a spool of thick organic cotton twine. Mabel would hold the twine steady against a brass ruler, and Marigold would use a pair of small antique scissors to make a clean, satisfying snip. Thimbly Whisker, the small mouse, sat cross-legged on a pile of soft flannel cloths, carefully dipping the bottom of each cotton wick into a shallow stoneware dish of melted wax, allowing it to stiffen into a perfect straight line. The bunnies stepped up to the bench to help. Berry and Caratina took the stiffened wicks and gently pressed them into the centre of the solid, pale yellow beeswax candles that Huxley Harpsichord had moulded. Each candle was then tucked securely into the hollow centre of a wooden lantern. Millie Moonbeam reached out and ran her small paw over the top of her chosen pine lantern. It felt wonderfully smooth, holding the residual warmth of the workshop air. She picked up a small rag dipped in linseed oil and began to rub the wood, listening to the soft, rhythmic shush of the cloth against the grain. With every stroke, the rich, golden lines of the pine wood deepened, catching the firelight in a soft, matte glow. There was no rush. Time seemed to stretch out in the warm workshop, measured only by the scrape of a stool, the snip of the twine, and the deep, steady breathing of the makers. Every lantern was prepared with a patient heart, built to cradle a single flame on its journey down the dark river. With their wood lanterns held securely under their arms, their smooth cedar and pine surfaces warmed by the workshop fire, Rosco and the bunnies stepped back out into the cool, crisp evening air. The blue twilight had deepened now into a rich, velvety indigo, so vast and still that it felt like a protective canopy pulled tight over the entire valley. They turned down the old mossy path that wound its way toward the ancient stone bridge. The path was dark, but no one felt nary a smidge of worry, for the way was perfectly familiar. A few yards ahead, standing at the edge of the woodland trail, a large, comforting figure was waiting. It was Shepherd Rumplewool, the steady old sheepdog. He wore his thick, weather-beaten oilskin coat, his long silver and white fur catching the light of a grand, heavy brass lantern that he held low to the ground. As Rosco and the bunnies approached, Shepherd Rumplewool did not say a word. Instead, he raised his lantern just a whiskerful fraction, letting its warm, golden beam cut through the soft evening mist to illuminate the slippery stone steps ahead. His tail gave a single, slow, rhythmic wag, a silent, hearty greeting that signaled everything was ready. He fell into step beside them, his heavy, padded paws making a faint thump against the damp earth. As they walked, other figures began to materialize silently from the surrounding lanes and hedgerows, joining the procession with unhurried grace. Through the soft gloom, Millie Moonbeam spotted Sorrel Otter, slipping quietly out from a path near the reeds, his thick coat perfectly groomed, moving with a fluid, patient stride. From another lane came Marlow Badger and Huxley Harpsichord, walking side by side, their heavy shapes casting long, reassuring shadows across the grass. There was something profoundly beautiful about the silence of the community. Dozens of friends were walking together, their shoulders nearly touching, yet the only sounds in the entire valley were the soft, rhythmic crunch of dry leaves beneath their feet, the gentle rustle of wool coats swishing against cotton trousers, and the distant, sleepy murmur of the river ahead. It was a shared meditation, a collective unburdening of the mind before the long winter rest. Soon the grand arch of the old stone bridge rose up before them, its ancient granite blocks covered in thick plates of dark green velvet moss. The river beneath it was remarkably calm tonight. Sorrel Otter stepped down onto the bank first, his intelligent eyes scanning the water. He dipped a paw into the dark mirror, checking the slow, patient pull of the current. He turned back to the gathering and gave a slow, contented nod. The water was perfect. It was a slow, gentle conveyor, ready to receive their lanterns. The villagers arranged themselves along the flat, smooth river stones and the low granite walls of the bridge. They moved with an extraordinary restful patience, finding their places in the dark, settling in for the most magical part of the evening. The air by the water's edge was cool and carried the crisp, refreshing scent of rivermint, damp slate, and the faint, sweet aroma of autumn leaves settling into the earth. Rosco sat cross-legged on a large, flat granite slab right at the water's edge, with Berry, Caratina, and Millie Moonbeam sitting cosily around him. Between his knees, Rosco placed his cedar lantern, the pale yellow beeswax candle sitting straight and true in its hollow core. The silence deepened, stretching out across the dark water like a soft blanket. Then, with a tiny, crisp sound that seemed to echo beautifully in the stillness, Marlow Badger struck a traditional flint. A small, brilliant spark flared in the gloom, catching a piece of dry charcloth, which Marlow blew upon with a slow, steady breath, until a tiny orange eye of fire glowed in his paws. He used this small ember to light a long, slender pine splinter. With an unhurried hand, Marlowe passed the flame to Huxley Harpsichord, who passed it down the line to Sorrel Otter, who in turn brought the golden light toward Rosco. Rosco took the small, glowing wooden splinter. He leaned forward, his breathing dropping into a deep, rhythmic rise and fall that matched the gentle lapping of the river against the stones. He held the flame to the thick, organic cotton wick of his candle. For a second, the wick sputtered just a tiny bit, releasing a sharp, clean scent of burning twine. Then, the flame caught the pure clover beeswax. A rich golden-orange light blossomed between Rosco's paws. The warmth of the flame instantly melted a tiny glassy pool of liquid wax at the base of the wick, releasing a deep, sweet aroma of summer honey and sun-warmed meadows into the cool night air. One by one, all along the riverbank, the wicks were lit. Thimbley Whisker held a tiny match to a candle no larger than a thimble, his little face illuminated in a bright amber glow. Marigold Mixtint and Mabel Seedling shared a single lantern between them, their small paws touching as they watched their wick flare into life. Within minutes, the dark, shadowy riverbank was transformed into a magnificent, glowing sanctuary. The dark indigo water reflected the many tiny amber flames, turning the river into a shifting, shimmering mirror of liquid gold. The light caught the silver fur of Finnegan Kelp, who had journeyed down from his lighthouse to join the quiet circle, and it cast a soft, warm glow over the long, peaceful ears of the bunnies. Millie Moonbeam stared intently into the centre of her own lantern's flame. The tiny yellow tongue of fire danced so slowly, so rhythmically, that it became her sleepy mind's sole focus. Every worry from the busy summer months, every hurried thought, and every ounce of tiredness seemed to be drawn out of her, absorbed completely by the steady, warm light of the candle. They sat in the glowing silence for a long, beautiful stretch of time, simply breathing together, watching the wax slowly pool and letting the absolute safety of the community wrap around them like a heavy winter quilt. The moment had finally arrived. The river was perfectly still, its dark surface waiting like a clean canvas to receive the glowing tribute of the valley. Sorrel Otter was the first to move. With an extraordinary fluid slowness, he knelt by the water's edge, his thick fur brushing against the damp river moss. He placed his smooth cedar lantern flat upon the dark surface of the river. He didn't push it, he simply let it go. The water cradled the wooden lantern instantly, and the gentle, invisible current began to draw it away from the bank, its golden flame burning straight and true. Next, Rosco guided the bunnies to the water's edge. Berry and Caratina moved in perfect unison, their small paws lowering their lanterns down until the pine wood met the liquid glass of the river. As the water took the weight, the dried clover beeswax threw a rich amber glow across the ripples. Millie Moonbeam stepped forward, her long ears drooping with a heavy, peaceful tiredness. She held her lantern for one last, quiet moment, feeling the solid warmth of the wood against her paws, and then she gently placed it onto the stream. One by one, the entire community followed. Marlow Badger, Huxley Harpsichord, and the tiny mice, Thimbley Whisker, Marigold Mixtint, and Mabel Seedling all launched their lights into the dark water. Even Shepherd Rumplewool, with a gentle, steady nudge of his nose, set a large, polished lantern drifting into the centre of the channel. What followed was a sight of absolute breathless wonder. As the many individual wooden lanterns found the centre of the river, they began to cluster together, forming a long, slow-moving, continuous ribbon of golden light. It looked as though a segment of the Milky Way had descended from the indigo sky to float effortlessly through the ancient woods. The movement of the lanterns was completely hypnotic. They drifted with a slow, unhurried majesty, occasionally touching with a soft, hollow clack of wood against wood, a gentle, percussive lullaby that echoed softly through the silent trees. There was no rush, just peace and calm. The river simply carried them forward, a brilliant highway of warmth moving through the cool, dark valley. Rosco and the bunnies stood side by side with their friends, watching the glowing ribbon wind its way around the great stone bend of the river. The sight was deeply calming. With every foot the lanterns drifted downstream. It felt as though the busy thoughts, the worries, and the active energies of the past year were being gently carried away with them. The valley was being quieted, cleared, and prepared for the long, restorative winter rest. They stood under the silver crescent moon for a long, beautiful stretch of time, their eyes following the fading embers of light as they grew smaller and smaller in the distance, disappearing behind the dark lace of the pine trees. The river was empty once more, dark and peaceful, having done its gentle labour. The silence that remained was different now. It was lighter, softer, and filled with a profound, unshakable peace. With the lanterns gone, and the quiet season officially welcomed, the villagers exchanged final, slow nods of gratitude. Shepherd Rumplewool raised his brass lantern one last time to light the path as everyone turned to wend their way back toward their homes. There was no lingering, no hurry. The heavy, beautiful weight of sleep had finally settled over the entire valley. Rosco and the bunnies walked back up the winding lane toward their cottage. Their steps were slower now, their limbs feeling wonderfully soft, heavy, and relaxed. The cool night air felt deeply refreshing against their warm faces, carrying the faint, sweet memory of melting beeswax and river mint. When they reached the cottage, the interior was perfectly quiet. the embers of the hearth fire glowing with a low, deep red warmth that cast long, sleepy shadows across the walls. One by one, with unhurried care, they climbed into their 4 feather beds. Rosco tucked himself deep into his blankets, letting his body sink into the cushioning mattress until the bedding shaped itself perfectly around him. Millie Moonbeam pulled her thick, forest green flannel quilt right up to her chinnigan, tucking her long ears flat against a cool, crisp linen pillow. The room was dark. The world outside was completely still. The river was flowing silently in the distance, and inside the cottage, the bunnies dreamed of drifting lanterns. As your eyes close heavily, and you let yourself sink into the absolute comfort of your own bed, let these gentle words wash over you like the soft, warm light of the floating lanterns. I am safe in this moment. My day is done, and my work is complete. I can let go of my thoughts now. The river will carry them away. My body is heavy, relaxed, and supported. There is nothing more I need to do tonight. I am surrounded by peace, inside and out. I give myself permission to fully rest. I am warm. I am protected. I am at peace. Let the quiet rhythm of your breathing carry you deeper and deeper into the velvet dark. The lanterns have made their journey. The valley is asleep, and you are entirely at rest. All was snug. All was well. Night-night.